What up, everybody? Welcome to Keep It in 9450, code name WBB. I'm your host, Daniel Artest. I got my co-host, my brother, my ace boom from the other room, kdot in the building. Son, what's going on with you, brother? How you been, man? It's been a minute, so glad to see you looking healthy. You know, I see you, the bucket is bucketing right now, so you already know what it is. What's going on, brother?
Hey, yo, what up? What it is? What's poppin'? The bucket is bucketing today. So I want to, first off, I appreciate you and everybody else for checking up on the kid. I was out of commission this past weekend. It was just a health thing, but everything's all good now. So I'm just excited to talk about these games. I think that the NCAA tournament so far has just been an incredible thing to watch. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to have tons of details about first round, second round, and I'm just ready to talk hoops. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, let's make it happen. Yeah, we were basically just going to talk about the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament. We're going to get into a little bit of upsets. We're going to talk a little bit of X and O's because a lot of issues going on with the X and O coaches and their struggles and stuff. And then we're just going to talk about the matchups for the Sweet 16, giving out our favorite games to watch. We're going to get some players to watch. And then we're just going to make some predictions, K. That's cool. Simple, right?
Yeah, that's good with me. You already know what it is.
Yeah, but before we start though, right? Before we start, we definitely got to show love to Colorado and Ole Miss, right? Two former WNIT teams who made it to the Sweet 16. K-Dot, like, you had an interesting point. When we was doing our pre-show, our pre-pod show over the phone, we talked for 80 minutes to prepare this show. And you alluded to, like, when Duke had a chance to be in the WNIT last year as a number one seed, and they didn't take it, and they didn't get the ball in motion to be in the trenches for a game like they had against Colorado. And the basketball guards is never wrong and stuff. So won't you expound more on that? Because you had some really interesting comments to say about Duke University with the NIT and then that coming back to haunt some karma.
Yeah, so it's funny that we talk about this, right? Because 2 years ago, Colorado and Ole Miss were in the NIT, and even Ole Miss themselves found themselves in the WNIT championship. And that to me was like a sign of preparation and a sign of good things to come. And since then, Ole Miss has been in the tournament twice, this time in the Sweet 16. And Colorado has also been in the tournament and this time in the Sweet 16. And I just believe that at that particular moment last year when Duke as a collective decided not to participate in the WNIT, I felt like that was a missed opportunity because you can't treat the WNIT like your ordinary regular season game. It actually means something. And I think that not giving that opportunity for the players to actually use that and for the staff to use that as preparation to participate in the big dance this year, I think that's what showed up in that game versus Colorado on Monday night, because I think from that standpoint, certain scenarios are always when it comes to basketball. And Duke truly believed that Duke could have beaten Colorado. Colorado was just a great sound team and ended up going into overtime and winning that game. And actually winning that game it wasn't really close at the end of it. So it's things like that where you want to prepare your program for those type of situations. And I think that if Duke had the opportunity to play in the WNIT last year, maybe things might be different. And maybe things might be different from the season overall. Because yeah, they were a 3 seed this year, but maybe they could have done something better in the ACC championship. Who knows? I think it's those type of things that prepare you for moments like this will actually get over the hump. Now, that's all to say Duke had an incredible season this year. I'm not taking anything away from Duke this year. I'm also not taking away from what the players and what Coach Carol Lawson has been able to do this year as a collective, because they did have a great showing throughout the season and in the ACC tournament. But I think that, again, is one of those situations where you have to use games and tournaments like the WNIT to prepare for moments like this. And I think that because they didn't participate last year, is probably part of the reason why certain schemes and things didn't work this year, that ultimately got them eliminated from the tournament.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think that if they would have took that, then maybe the underclassmen or the players from last year, maybe this year this is their first time involved. Obviously, sophomores, and they could have some data stored on how to play in the game like this magnitude. Because yeah, even though it's the NIT, the lights are still bright. Maybe it's not as bright as the NCAA tournament actually, but it's still some bright lights in there, and it will actually prepare you to when you get to that level of play when it's time to play in the tournament and stuff. And kdot, let's talk about the upsets real quick. Yo, we had what the number one seeds go down, Stanford and Indiana. They both lost to us and Miami, respectively. We had 12 seed Toledo over Iowa State, 11 seed Mississippi State over Creighton, 12 seed Florida Gulf Coast over Washington State, Princeton at the 10 seed over NC State, and also Georgia as a 10th seed over Florida State. These upsets is wild, kdot. What you think is like the biggest upset of the tournament so far?
I think for me, maybe the biggest upset would probably for do I even have a biggest upset?
Mm,
Because I'm gonna tell you something, and I'm gonna go on record, and this might be a hot take, this might not be, I don't know. I think the playing field this year,
yeah,
other than just like how they say it was South Carolina versus the field, right?
yeah.
It's South Carolina, and then there's everybody else, basically, if you will. I really think the field was evenly matched. And I truly believe that there were certain seedings that was unfair to certain teams. And what I mean by that is I feel like certain teams who were, let's say, the eighth seed may not have been the eighth seed. I think they should have been higher. I think they should have been maybe a six or a five. Not to say that they would be maybe some of them top 16, but I truly feel like this year the field was so much more competitive and from a parity standpoint that I think evenly matched, they were just as tough as those higher seeds. So in retrospect to what the question is, I don't know if I have a quote unquote biggest upset because I look at the brackets. And yes, even though I would have picked the higher seed, I had a feeling that the lower seed could actually compete and win the game. A perfect example is Ole Miss Stanford. I truly believe that from a conference standpoint, the SEC, even though everybody claimed that the SEC had a down year, if you compare the SEC to other conferences, is bar none to me.
Mhm.
The same thing with the ACC. We've said it earlier the season before college basketball even started that the ACC could be highly competitive and they can see a whole bunch of teams come into this tournament and do well in this tournament. And I think we've seen from proof for SEC teams in the Sweet 16, for ACC teams in the Sweet 16. It's showing and proving that those two conferences are pretty good. And the Stanford Ole Miss game, it stands out to me because it shows what we talk about when it comes to playing in the trenches defensively versus having high powered, talented offensive weapons, if you will, in Stanford. And I think that game in particular, from a defensive standpoint, Coach Yo was just tremendous in what she did in her defensive scheme versus Stanford. So that entire game, it dictated the trajectory of what Stanford was going to do all night. And unfortunately, the result was your guards have to be elite. And it goes to show that Stanford, for the past 3 or 4 years, they haven't had that dynamic guard that can just say, you know what, time out for all of this. I'm going to set the offense up the way that I need to. I'm going to navigate everybody on defense the way that I need to, and we're going to win games. And I just feel like this year it wasn't that. Felt the same way last year in the Final Four. It came back to bite them. So that game in particular just stands out to me more because not only that they were one seed, but when you have someone like Ole Miss versus Stanford, there's going to be 95% of the community that's not a part of the SEC that's going to pick Stanford in that particular situation. And a lot of people did.
Yeah.
So my thing from a parity standpoint and from an overall field standpoint, maybe that game is the one that stuck out to me most, but I don't think I would call it a surprise, if you will. So, what about you as far as like your upsets?
All right, the reason why I think it's surprising to me is because it's had nobody going for them. Like they're not in the top 25. The coach is not considered like a great coach in everybody's mind and everything. And also they have four freshmen, kdot, that never played in a situation like this. And the way they played, huge when it mattered. So that's why I think that it's definitely surprising because you gotta understand, they was a national champ. They're always in the Final Four. They're a great team. They got great players and Haley Jones and Cameron Brink, Hannah Jump. And the fact that they couldn't pull out that win was crazy. But also, we got to talk about before we get into the X and O's, we got to get into the X and O's before the X and O's with Coach Yo and what she did in getting this win. I really think that she was just decided to let Haley Jones go do her thing, but really lock in on Cameron Brink because listen, when Cameron Brink got the ball in the post like that, whenever she was down low, and whenever they actually gave her an entry pass to do her thing, they couldn't stop her. They couldn't stop her at all. So when Haley Jones had the ball on her hands and was trying to take over and do this and do that, I felt the level of comfort. I put on my coach's hat and I was like, you know what? I'm cool with that. Go ahead, go do your thing. Because there's a better chance of stopping Haley Jones than stopping Cameron Brink when they're going to the basket because Haley Jones, you can really just sag off of because she really can't shoot. Yeah, we're going to get into that later because I do think that her draft stock has plummeted a little bit. I don't think that she's the second pick that we all thought earlier in the year. I think that like she really has to improve that shooting and everything because on that next level is going to be different. But yeah, but once they did that and now, look, then they started putting a little bit more pressure on the guards, and they really couldn't throw an entry pass. I seen Cameron Brink yell for the ball 9 times in the second half, kdot, and those 9 times she didn't get the ball, or she got the ball a little bit too late, where they can scratch. And you know how Ole Miss fight when they was hounding, it was hounding and stuff. But when they actually gave Cameron Brink the ball in the post, she scored every time. She scored every time she touched the rock. They couldn't really guard her, and then she's getting it on the defensive end and she's running the floor too. The best thing you can do to a post is reward them by running the floor, by protecting the rim and everything. And I felt like Stanford, they got in their own way and they fumbled a big game. But just talking about Ole Miss and the way they played, I really enjoyed it. And K-Dot, like, and as we segue on to another segment real quick, like, I really think that going forward, they play Louisville. I think they could beat Louisville, and I think that they can beat Iowa too, as well. I think that the way their perimeter guards is, Haley Van Lith in Litchfield Prison. They're gonna have on a C block in Litchfield Prison. That's orange is the new black for everybody that don't know. They're gonna have her in ad seg. Basically, she's going to be in lockdown solitary confinement. I think Caitlin Clark might have a little bit more success against their guards because I said Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is going to have a lot more success against their guard because she's just so dynamic. You really can't, with her, you got to be on point at all times. But I really think that they can get past Louisville. I really believe it. And I think that they can actually get past Iowa too. They stick to the game plan and everything. Because listen, like much as I love Cesano, I think that she gets the ball in the post. She's a low, but on the defensive end, she's not as dynamic as Cameron Brink is. Like you've seen Ole Miss really was like, oh snap, we're not going to the basket. we seen that. We've seen that in that game. So I think that Ole Miss really has a shot to get to the Final Four. I really think they have a big shot. I really hope that team, I know they're in Seattle now. I've seen the pictures earlier. They're in Seattle, but I really hope they're locked in because this is the opportunity of a lifetime and stuff. And I feel like that the style Coach Yo has just rubbed off that culture is just so dope. And I think that Coach Yo sees the moment, she senses the moment, and is not going to let it go. And I think that this team is not going to have any breaks. I think that when you got a coach like her, and I was in a Twitter space with her, and shout outs to Coach Payne for letting me speak to her and everything. Like I felt the energy and how she coaches and things like that. And so I really think that they have a big chance to go to this Final Four. I really do. They're going to have an amazing weekend, and I'm actually rooting for them. I really want to see them because I did hear a lot about them, like not in a positive, like in a negative, like they just look like some type of afterthought. But when you really watch them play, they really get after it. They're really scrappy and they really know. And I think that they really read the headlines and nobody believing in them. And they using it as bulletin board material. And this is why they're in a great position right now to have a big weekend.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one thing that's going to shape up is somebody is going to get promoted within the mid-range mafia. We have two dynamic mid-range shooters in Haley Van Lith and Angel Baker. And I believe that The victor of this game becomes a made woman. They go from soldier to lieutenant and become a made woman, and they will be able to control their destiny within the mid-range mafia. And when you look at Angel Baker and Haley Van Lith, just from a overall game standpoint, they're crafty in their ball handling. They know how to maneuver within the spaces of the floor between elbow and wing out. Not to say that they're preferable long range shooters, but I've seen in the tournament where the mid range has killed a lot of teams. And Angel Baker did exactly that versus Stanford. And the same thing happened with Haley Van Lith in Texas. When you have teams that have bigger bodies down low, what you want to do from a cross match standpoint is you want to do one or two things. You want to get their bigs out so that you can blow past them and get easy buckets, or you want to put them into a position where the defense is playing drop and you can just shoot that 12, 15 footer right up over them. It's not too far for them not to recover. And I think Angel Baker did the same thing from
Yeah.
a one-on-one standpoint. I've seen a lot of drop defense, drop coverage from Stanford going, and a lot of the times they were going under the screen because they didn't trust the shooting of Ole Miss. And Ole Miss in the beginning of the game shot lights out from the perimeter. And I think that's what kind of got their rhythm going from a jump shooting standpoint. The same thing with Haley Van Lith. Haley Van Lith, you have to keep somebody on her. You can't go under the screen with Haley Van Lith. You have to always fight through the screen, go over that, over the top. And I didn't see that a lot with Texas either. I seen that they tried to play a lot of drop coverage because they felt like their bigs could recover on the drop coverage and get a hand up. And unfortunately, it just didn't happen. Haley Van Lith was just a killer over and through the screens. And her screen navigation in that game was just completely bonkers. It was incredible to see. And I think within this game, it's a game within the game. Everybody knows that in the NCAA tournament, in order to win a national championship, in order to get to the Final Four, you have to have elite guards that will push you to the brink of championship glory. And Angel Baker and Haley Van Lith for their respective teams are two elite guards that can potentially lead their teams to Final Fours. And I think, again, coming out of this, we will crown a new lieutenant and one of them will become a made woman. And
Mm.
you heard that first from your boy kdot.
All right, listen, before we get to that, because you jumped ahead a little bit with the highlights, the plays to watch. We already jumped that. But hey, we got to talk about this X and O's coaches poll real quick because there was a lot of discussion and everything, and some coaches that's left off. But we seen had Tara Vanderveer of Stanford, Gina Orium of UConn, Jeff Walsh of UConn, Bill Finley at Iowa State, Carl Schmesko of Florida Gulf Coast was the only ones that got the votes as far as like the best X and O's coach, the best X and O's coaches. So let's talk about it real quick. What's your thoughts when it comes to X and O's? Like, what does that mean to you? How you define it?
All right. And before we move forward, Jeff Walsh, you said UConn twice, Jeff
I did,
Walsh,
my bad.
Louisville. So we're good. We're good though. But the term X's and O's, what kills me about this whole thing, right? X's and O's is just a way to strategically put your teams in positions to win. You use that term basically to strategize. And the definition of the O's is offense. The definition of the X's is defense. So I can't for the life of me understand why the explanation for Dawn Staley not being on the list, for Coach Yo not to be on the list, for Vic Schaefer not to be on the, I don't understand that the X's and O's in terms of offensive schemes is the reason why those quote unquote defensive minded coaches weren't on the list. That was iffy, and I didn't like the explanation towards that when the X is clearly defense. And I'm gonna give you more proof of how X's and O's work. Coach Yo, and I'm so sorry, Stanford and Stanford fans. I truly apologize for continuing to talk about this, but I have to because it's a part of the X's and O's conversation. The scheme that Coach Yo used was so incredible. Basically, it was just to allow Stanford, just like you said earlier, to let Cameron Brink do Cameron Brink things, right? Just be as physical as you can with her. If she makes the shot, fine. If she doesn't make the shot, we grab the rebound and we're off to the races.
Yep.
One of the biggest things from a defensive standpoint is help side defense. And Ole Miss's help side defense was very good. I'm talking off the weak side, when you have someone sagging as much as you had with some of those Ole Miss defenders to help double team Cameron Brink didn't have a lot of time to make the go ahead decision to pass off of those weak side double teams. And that's why you didn't see a lot of open layups from Stanford, because she just didn't have the trajectory to make those passes because the defense was just so quick in rotations. So it was like you play the field off the weak side defense, almost like in a zone, like a weak side zone off the double team. And then once she passes it back out to the perimeter, you go back to your, in some cases, when you switch over to matchup zone, you saw that a little bit in Ole Miss where they looked like they were running a 3-2. They looked like they were running a 1-3-1. They didn't turn around and look like they were running a 2-3. When actuality, they was just playing, and to be honest with you, they just had certain areas where when they rotated off double teams, they had passing lanes covered. That's all that was. And that's a great scheme to have when you're Coach Yo and you're playing the number one seed in Stanford. So that's a perfect example of how X's and O's work. We also look at certain X's and O teams like Coach Bill Fennell of Iowa State. He was a part of that list as well. He got upset by Toledo. And my thing is, sometimes when we talk about X's and O's, you got to look at the full trajectory of what the X's and O's look like. And I just didn't like how it was perceived. And again, this is an anonymous voting, so we know what that's all about as well. I think that the whole idea of what the X's and O's mean, you got to look at the full trajectory. And I think that Don Staley has done an incredible job on the X's and the O's side when it comes to putting her team in positions to win. And there were some other coaches that are well deserving of that as well. Brenda Freeze of Maryland has had an incredible season with technically no traditional big. She's basically playing everybody five out on the perimeter and gang rebounding, if you will, and running the show offensively and using a high percentage layups and mid percentage 3-point shooting to get her things across. But what do you think about the whole X's and O's situation when it comes to that?
I just think that when you're 34 and 0, you should be on the X's and O's list. Like you ain't just getting there because you got the best players on the team or whatever. Like you just got all the greatest players or whatever. So I think that with X's and O's, I think that is really underrated as far when it comes to a great coach like Don Staley or Coach Show, because you still got to have the X's and the O's for defense or whatever, right? Like you got to have the X to be a lockdown defending team. To you got to have the X's and O's to be able to upset a number one seed like a Stanford or Indiana. I just don't understand the list. I understand that it comes from a position of hate and stuff. Because think about it, even when Gino was doing his thing and stuff, a lot of people don't win when you're winning. You're the it person at the moment. Nobody likes that. So that's just what it is. That's how I chalk it up to be. It is what it is. And then all you're just going to do is just get these coaches even more fired up and more motivated, because when you have an elite coach and you got them feeling like an underdog, that's where it's most dangerous at. And especially when they got the air of their team like that, when their team is willing to run through a brick wall for them, it's just going to be more trouble. Y'all just waking up sleeping giants. Where y'all could just be honestly, just be logical and be like, all right, cool. Listen, the defensive game plan was dope, and this offensive game plan was dope as well. So what they got to do is the anonymous people got to understand, listen, get that hate out your heart. You're not going to prosper in life when you have all that hatred in your heart. But yeah, let's keep it pushing real quick. We at the 6-6. We are in the Sweet 16 finally. And the list, kdot, the teams is looking really competitive. And there's going to be some great games coming up this upcoming weekend. I'm really excited to see how these games pan out. So what's the what 3 games that we talked about, the teams that we was going to talk about when we did our pre-pod? I think we had, oh yeah, South Carolina versus UCLA. Ole Miss versus Louisville, and UConn versus Ohio State. Those games is going to stand out. I'm really interested in seeing, obviously, we're talking about Ole Miss and Louisville, but that UConn Ohio State game is going to be good because they mirror images of each other. They have pretty much the same type of players and stuff. And really, I've really been high on JC Sheldon. And finally, she's injury free and she's looking good. That jumper's still sweet as buttermilk. I don't know what you put on buttermilk or what you mix buttermilk with, but it's buttermilk biscuits or whatever with some honey. But I'm really excited to see that game as well. It's just Ohio State, they can fight. And UConn, obviously, we know what they can do as well because that in their last game and with Aaliyah Edwards on the bench with foul trouble like that, and they was able to still hold it down without her for a long stretch. I thought that was pretty big of UConn because Baylor is a tough team. And Baylor really came out firing that ball. And it looked like UConn was going to be in trouble at the end when when UConn just turned it on. And one thing they can hang their hat on is their defense too. They're a great scoring team, but they have amazing defense. And once they just held, they held Baylor by the throat. They just kept the pressure on it. So, what's your thoughts like going into the Sweet 16 with those games that we talked about over the pre-pod?
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right with Ohio State, UConn. One thing that concerns me about Ohio State is sometimes they start off really slow. That's a big concern. And I know that when they are up, they don't necessarily keep leads. We saw that in the North Carolina game the other day on Monday. And one thing that me about this matchup is the point guard matchup, Nika Mule and JC Sheldon. And JC Sheldon, I know she had been in and out of the lineup with injuries this year, but she looked really poised, really sound, really like the point guard and All American that I've seen JC Sheldon play in her tenure at Ohio State. So I do truly believe that matchup is going to be really good. I want to see how Nika Mule defensively holds up against her and vice versa because Nika Mule is also very sound offensively as well. She doesn't score like JC Sheldon can, but she knows how to run an offense. And one thing would be pressure on pressure. I know that UConn doesn't pressure often because sometimes they're just talent wise, they're good enough not to use it, but they are very, very familiar with presses. And that's going to me. I want to see if Ohio State comes out pressing, come out with their diamond defense, come out with their 44 base defense, 42 base defense. These are all full court presses, by the way, if you're not a basketball head like I am. But I want to see how UConn is able to use those press breaks, which I think they can. Griffin is going to be the pivotal factor in that press break because she can handle the ball, she can maneuver and be a rover, if you will, in the middle of that floor where they're able to pass the ball to her. And I want to see from a half court setting what our favorite Z Fudd will be able to do because she caught fire in that Baylor game as well. So that game is definitely interesting. Another one, South Carolina and UCLA. We've seen this before. We've talked about it before earlier in the season as they did play in Columbia, South Carolina early in the season, and that was a great game as well. I want to see the Charisma Osborne, Bree Beal matchup. That's always a fun matchup. I want to see the Zaya Cook, Kiki Rice matchup. That's always a great matchup. Most importantly, I want to see what UCLA has learned from that first game and if nerves will come in because this is a different beast. We're talking about the Sweet 16, and we're not talking about just some regular season game in Columbia, South Carolina. Now we're talking about the NCAA tournament in Greenville, South Carolina, which I know that the South Carolina fams will be in attendance full fledged and in effect. And of course, obviously, I jumped the gun earlier and talked about the Louisville matchup too soon, but I stand by what I stand when it comes to Angel Baker as well as Haley Van Lith. So those are my things on that.
Okay. So, like, all right, we can just talk about players to watch during the Sweet 16, Elite Eight thing. We got to talk about Angel Reese, who's averaging basically a 30 and 20 under the bright lights and stuff. And she just goes after it on the rebounds and everything. And we already talked about it. We don't really got to talk much about it. I just hate that the schedule messed up her season as far as like individual awards and everything. Cause my whole thing is this: if you're not going to, I think that Aaliyah Boston should win. I do. I really do. But if you're not going to give it to her, you're going to give it to Caitlin Clark. But at the same time, I just feel like this, and I hope people agree with me. I really feel like during those non-conference games that Ken Mulkey scheduled, I get it. She didn't know what her team was going to look like. That's why she scheduled it. But at the same time, whatever. I just feel like if she would have just played against 6 teams over the Power Five conferences, right? Let's just say she doesn't go 12-0 with that schedule. Let's just say she goes 10-2, but Angel is still putting up the same numbers. But that I think that strength of schedule number really hurts Angel Reese as far as individual awards and things like that. Because if you're not going to give it to Leah Boston, I'm giving it to Angel Reese, to be honest. Like what she's doing has been amazing. There was one point where it was Michigan 15, Angel Reese 14 rebounds. And the fact that she's not going to really probably win any awards because of schedule thing. That's how I feel about Angel Reese. What she's averaging literally, I think she's averaging 29.5, 20 boards a game. Like she's taking her game to the next level and everything. But yeah, we already talked about Angel Baker versus Haley Van Lith in that battle. But yeah, Kate, I wanted you to go in more on Charisma Osborne versus Bria Bill. That's the matchup right there that I want to see. Charisma Osborne, she can go, but Bria Bill, she stops. So I think that's going to be a great matchup. I really think that, like Bria Bill, to me, this I think that this game right here, if she holds down Charisma Osborne to a respectable number, I think that this game right here will really help her shoot up in the draft rankings and stuff as far as with her stock. I think that she's a first round pick. I've seen some mock drafts have her as a second rounder, but I really think that with what she can do and her potential as an offensive player as well as to her defense is really big. And she's young, so she's gonna only get better. I think that she has a shot that can definitely improve. And she shot 38% from the three this year. Now, mind you, she's only averaging like what, 6 points, whatever. But like that three ball, especially in this era of basketball, is going to go far. It's going to go far now. So I do think that Bria Bill it's going to be a great matchup. It's going to be a great matchup. And I think that with Charisma Osborne, with the offense she's putting out, well, she just had 36 in her last game. I think that's a great challenge for her too as well. And they already got data on each other anyway because they already played against each other. So that's gonna be a tough game. But I'm really looking forward towards that matchup, Kira.
Yeah, and just right quick, talking about rebuild and the potential of her being a first round pick. I strongly agree with that. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because when you look at what happened with Rebecca Gardner last year, we're talking about not the same kind of now I'm not comparing player to player, but let's talk about the vibes. From a defensive standpoint, both Rebecca Gardner and Bree Beal have length. They have tact. They have incredible footwork. And Rebecca Gardner, from her role standpoint, she wasn't asked to score a lot. And I think that any WNBA team who needs a perimeter defender like Rebecca Gardner at with the Chicago Sky last year could use the same type of prototype as a Bree Beal for their team. And one thing that's going to shape in this particular game is how Charisma Osborne uses her screens. Screen navigation is going to be very important. The reason why you can't just go one on one against Bree Beal is because of that length, because of that footwork, and you're going to have to put her in situations where she's running through a whole bunch of screens. So if you want the game plan, that's probably the best way to do it from a perimeter scoring standpoint. Now, I can't talk to you about the bigs down low. Can't do it because at the end of the day, you're just going to have to battle. But from a perimeter standpoint, if you're looking for open shots, you're just going to have to use screen navigation from an offensive standpoint a lot more than you would in your other games that you've played in this tournament. Because again, Bree Beal is way too elite of a one-on-one ball on-ball defender. And she's very underrated from an off-ball defender standpoint because she knows how to rotate as well as use the passing lanes to her advantage. So screen navigation is going to be very important in this game. And we'll just see how UCLA is able to do that from an offensive standpoint.
But also screen navigation is important on Bria Bill's end too. I think that Bria Bill as a one-on-one defender, she's equally as good when she's navigating screens herself. Like she really knows the floor. You could tell that she watches tapes and she remembers plays and then she knows how to navigate through those plays. She's a dangerous defender. It's like you don't get a break from her. And you know how me, Kate, I like to compare defenders to Ron, to my brother and stuff like that. And Ron struggled actually on when people were setting screens. And that's how some plays was able to get theirs or whatever. I remember when Ron played in the finals, Paul Pierce, the only time he really had success was when they was running on screens and stuff. But what cost him was Paul Pierce wanted to just go one-on-one against somebody like that. Like with Brea, that's the toughest part about it. You know what I mean? With her, because she can navigate screens just as well. You can't bully her. She's strong as hell. And I know that a lot of people in the community don't really be liking when you label a person as strong or playing like bully ball and stuff like that. But in this case, yes, because this is defense now. Defense, you gotta be strong. You gotta be a bit of a bully because you're gonna get hit with screens often. So you're gonna have to hit back and things of that sort. So I really do think that like Charisma Osborne do have a lot of her work cut out for her because of the way that Brea plays defense. And I know that I think it's time for me to try to get on that train of because I really love what Aaliyah Boston does on defense. It's hard for me to walk away from that when it's coming to this National Defensive Player of the Year award. But when I see Brea and how she just makes life hell for people, I just be damn, like she could really defend at a professional level right now. Like she has all league as a rookie potential all league defender. I see it, bro.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And again, that's probably the only kind of scheme that you could use against Bree Beal, even though again, Bree Beal is elite on both ends
Yeah.
from a on-ball standpoint and from an off-ball standpoint. She just knows it. But obviously, you're not going to change up too much of your offense just for one team, but that matchup is going to be very interesting. And I'm not even going to sit here and say that we won't see Bree Beal a little bit on Kiki Rice to fluster Kiki Rice a little bit because she's done an excellent job as well offensively for UCLA. That's going to be an incredible matchup to look forward to, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, definitely. And also other players that we got our eyes on too, Jayla Sherrod from Colorado, Maddie Segrist from Villanova. I think Maddie, she got to have another amazing game because I've
Mhm.
seen like people think that she's like a second round pick, and I'm like, I don't know about all that. They trying to put her in the same position as what they was doing with Nas Hillman last year because she's 6'1", playing forward, and she a three, and she's quick enough to play the three, and she's big and strong enough to play the four. So I think that Maddie, she got to have a really big weekend to put that to rest, whether she win or lose. You know, her performance got to make sure it's on point. And as far as Jayla Sherrod from Colorado, what a story. Only one Power Five believed in her. She took that, was there for 4 years. And then now she got the big upset over Duke. And look, she's going to graduate with 2 masters and everything. And she's what you call perseverance, just sticking to the grind, staying with the craft. I know that she had an injury in high school that she was dealing with, and Colorado still believed in her. I really loved the moment for her. It was really dope to see how emotional she was while her team was off celebrating, they all happy to ride. And Jayla is just like in tears, just really just taking in and soaking in the moment and stuff. And I'm really pushing for her to whatever she's going to do with her basketball career. I hope that she does keep it moving as far as getting a chance to play in the W. I would love to see that for her. She's really dope. And that was my first time ever seeing her. I didn't know who she was. I don't know if you heard of her until then.
Oh,
I
yeah.
haven't heard of her. So it was really cool to see her go. And I was just like she's playing the determination. And then when you hear her speak, you understand why and stuff. And this is why I love being new to basketball. I love being new to women's basketball, kdot, because of now I could be like, cool, now I can write this player down and follow them and stuff like that. It's actually pretty dope to learn something new all the time. Like you say, you learn something new every day. But with women's basketball, for me, because of we're going into our third year, like it's just so many great basketball players I haven't seen yet. And I just can't wait to see more. So like that was pretty dope. Shout outs to Jayla Sherrod. She was on the spaces yesterday too with the committee. Shout outs to the committee as well. So that's pretty dope that she's getting the love and the flowers that she rightfully deserves.
Yeah, Jalen Sherrod, I have to tilt my hat off to her because I do, and I have seen her play this year a couple times. One versus Utah, one versus that Stanford game. I was pulling for her in that Stanford game, that game that they lost in overtime too. I really truly believe that Jalen Sherrod has done an incredible job at the guard position for Colorado, and her perseverance, and just like you said, her story is incredible. And yes, she was on that Spaces last night with the committee. That was great. Oh, so just a great person, and I'm definitely rooting for her coming up in this weekend. I think that just from an overall Sweet 16 standpoint, I want to go back to the parity of the tournament.
Yeah.
This is a great tournament.
Yes, it really is.
It truly is a great tournament. All of the and like I said, I don't some of these upsets, I just don't think that they were really upsets. I just think that they were just equally matched teams where the winning team got the better end of it. Truly believe it.
A lot of underseeding.
Yeah, a lot of underseeding. I just think that it was more so underseeding, if anything. You look at matchups and you just can tell. You can tell that, hey, this team is going to do numbers against the next. And I think that's what we saw in the first two rounds. And one thing that I am going to laugh at right now, listen, we've talked about it just about all season long. Big 12, you need to do something. Yeah, I'm calling you out. The Big 12, you need to do something because guess what? There's no team in the tournament from the Big 12 that's in the Sweet 16. What are we doing here? Come on. What happened, Texas? What happened, Baylor? What happened, Iowa State? You know, what happened, Oklahoma? What happened?
Well, hold on. Iowa State, you got to give them a pass. They lost Stephanie Soares. Like, you got to
I
give them a
get
pass.
that, but when you're playing Toledo, and not to
Oh,
say that
yeah,
Toledo
yeah,
is
yeah,
not a
yeah.
not to say that Toledo is a bad team. Again, I felt like Toledo was underseeded as well. But when you're looking at, again, another X's and O's coach who has an All-American, I just believe that there are certain games that you prepare for, and Iowa State was unprepared, and Toledo did an incredible job doing what they do because the MAC was a very competitive conference this year, and Toledo did a great job in winning that conference tournament. And Lockett and the Rockets, got to give it up to Lockett and the Rockets because Lockett was just incredible in that game. It's just one thing to me. I just can't give the Big 12 a pass this year because we honestly didn't really talk about the Big 12 at all this year because we already knew. We already knew what was going on. Maybe with the exception of Texas, and I'm saying that with a grain of salt too. I just felt like they really underachieved this year, and it's proven because none of them were in the Sweet 16. And I'll leave it at that.
You're a wild boy. Listen, all right, come on, let's move on before we close the show out. Hey, you ready to make some predictions for this weekend's games? What's going on? Are you
Yeah,
ready? All right,
let's get it.
let's get it. All right, cool. So we're gonna start with the Greenville 1 region. So that means we got South Carolina, UCLA, and we have Notre Dame and Maryland. I think I think it's one of two regions that's chalk. They got the top four, South Carolina being one, UCLA being four, Notre Dame being three, and Maryland being two. KDOT. I guess we're gonna agree with that. South Carolina is gonna move forward, right? Yeah.
I just think that again, we're in Greenville. You're only an hour, let's say, give or take, depending on who's driving. You're an hour 15 minutes from Columbia. All you got to do is hit up 26 to I think it's a 385, and you're right there in Greenville. Just think that South Carolina is going to be ready. They're going to be prepared. They're chasing history, and they don't want UCLA to spoil that. I think South Carolina is going to win that one.
Yeah, I don't want UCLA to spoil my prediction all the way from last year, KDOT, because made a nice prediction last year that South Carolina was going to run the table. I want them to keep it on. But it's going to be a great game, though. It actually might be
Absolutely.
it's going to be tougher than what anybody else is thinking. I think that UCLA believes themselves that they can beat South Carolina. So it's going to be it's going to be definitely an interesting game to watch. So we're going to tap into that one. Let's move on down to Notre Dame versus Maryland. Now, K. This is an interesting game.
It is.
It really is. And I know people probably going to be like, Dara Mabry is done. Olivia Miles is done. So let's just write them off. But they don't understand like the coaching that they have Neil Ivy, which I'm Team Ivy, by the way. I just want to let y'all know that. I think that she's amazing. I just feel like this game is not going to be a cakewalk. But with Maryland, gotta love that Diamond Miller.
Yeah,
She's
for sure.
elite, elite level basketball player. Me, you know what? This is going to be tough. I feel like if Olivia Miles was there, I feel like Notre Dame will win this game, but I'm gonna go with Maryland on this one. I feel Notre Dame is tough. They play very hard. The fact that they got here, right here, it says a lot. But I feel like you need as many good players at this time, at this level right here of college basketball going into the Sweet 16. I don't want to go against Notre Dame. I really don't, but I'm gonna go with Miss. I hope you're a contrarian, K-Dot, and go for Notre Dame though. I really do. I hope that you go for Notre Dame on this one.
I would love to go with Notre Dame, but if you look at the game versus Mississippi State, I do believe that Notre Dame loses that game had Jessica Carter not gotten in foul trouble. I truly believe that. Think that because of how Maryland plays, it's going to be very tough for Notre Dame to keep up with the pace, in my opinion. You have Diamond Miller on the other end. I know the focus is going to be on Citron. I know the focus is going to be on Ebo. So they're going to have tremendous games. And we need to see who is going to be able to step up for Notre Dame. And it's very hard to picture who will. And Maryland is just determined. Maryland felt disrespected for being in the seating that they were in, and they're out on a mission. Abby Myers is out on a mission. Sellers is out on a mission, and I think one of the
Hmm.
X factors in this game is going to be my shooter, Brene Alexander. I truly believe so. They're going to have to figure out how to contain Renee Alexander shooting. And if she see one go in, it's barbecue chicken because one thing Cheyenne Sellers is going to do is Cheyenne Sellers is going to look for her open shooters. And that's one thing she does as a big guard at 6'2". She can do everything. And one thing about Maryland and what Coach Brenda Freeze has been able to do is, again, gang rebounding, getting out and running, and playing solid defense on the perimeter. And without Olivia Miles, without Dara Mabry there, is really going to be a tough task for Notre Dame. And I hate to be that guy. I want to be the contrarian, and I want them to listen to this as added motivation. But just from that standpoint, it's just going to be tough to pick against Maryland.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be tough. So it really is. Well, get well soon to Dara Mabry and Olivia Miles over there. I really hope they come back ready to rock because this team is close. They're close, kdot. They could be
They are.
next up. They could
Yeah.
be next up to win a championship and stuff. All right, let's move on down to the Seattle 4 region. We have Ole Miss versus Louisville and Colorado versus Iowa. Yeah, kdot. This one, Ole Miss and Louisville is going to be interesting. Really, we already talked about Angel Baker versus Haley Van Lith. That's going to be a dope matchup. But I just feel like defensively that Ole Miss, they're too aggressive and for that were too intense the way they play defense. And I think that they're getting past. I think they're getting past Louisville, bro. I really do. I really think they're going to get past Louisville. And then as far as Colorado versus Iowa, Colorado's another one that's tough defensively as well. But I feel Iowa, Kaylin Clark, Monica Susano, and I cannot believe it's blinking. My name is blinking on the other one. She wears number 24. I forgot. My name is blinking. All I know is that, shoot,
You talking about Gabby?
my name is blanking. I just know that right now, her threes, the way at the rate she's hitting threes right now is crazy. And I wish I don't got my notes in front of me. Long story. I would say the dog ate my homework. My son presses delete on the laptop too much. So I'm just freestyling right now. But I feel like with Colorado and Iowa, this one is gonna go. But I'm gonna give it to Iowa.
Okay. And the player that you're referring to is Gabby Marshall,
Yes, yes,
24, Gabby Marshall. Very tough guard.
yes.
Very tough guard out of
Yeah,
Cincinnati.
yeah. They talk about Caitlin Clark a lot, but there's some other good players on this team too.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
believe that. Believe that. So my picks, I'm going Ole Miss because of rebounding, how tough they are on the rebounding,
yeah.
and especially on the offensive rebounds. They do such a great job. In addition to South Carolina, another team that does an incredible job of offensive rebounding is Ole Miss. They know how to box out. They know how to put themselves in a position to keep plays alive. And I like what they do on the rebounding end. And on the other side, I like the Colorado Iowa matchup. I think that Iowa can sustain their high. I know they're a high power offense. If they get going early, I really think that it can be trouble for Colorado because me personally, um, I think that sometimes Colorado can get in their own way. I've seen it a couple times this year when they played, especially against that Stanford game in Colorado. So I am going to go with Iowa there. So I got Ole Miss and Iowa in that Seattle 4.
It's Ole Miss, Iowa. That's gonna be a good one. All right, let's move back up to Greenville 2, which we have Miami versus Villanova and LSU and Utah. Kate, I love the post. Peely versus Angel Reese is gonna be a fun one right there. Gonna be a nice, fun physical battle. And I think that I'm not gonna say they're gonna cancel each other out, but I do think that this is probably one of Angel's. This probably be Angel's second toughest battle in the paint after Aaliyah Boston. I would say that. But at the same time, you got Alexis Morris. And you got Katari Poole. It's New York. Katari Poole went to South Shore, the same school that unfortunately beat Nicole Melnis the other day and stuff. But I feel like LSU just have more power. A little J. Johnson and stuff. I just feel like LSU is just going to move on. And as far as Miami versus Villanova, and as much as I like Maddie Siegrist, I feel like Miami's undefeated too. They're the lowest seed at 9 in this bracket. And I feel like they have that mentality too, that intense mentality of getting right to it as well. I think that I wouldn't even consider it upset, Kata. I really just think that Miami's really undefeated and that Miami can possibly pull this out. I'm gonna go with Miami on that one too as well. Can't hear you. You on mute?
Yeah, I think that Miami will be a tough defensive team. You actually took my upset pick. I do believe that I think it is still going to be a battle. I do
Yes.
think it's going to be a battle. I won't be surprised that Villanova comes out of this, but just looking at the matchup, I think Maddie Siegrist is definitely going to have a time against Miami. I do think that there's going to be some elite shooting in this game from Candiver out of Miami, one of the twins, and Harden is going to have the Harden Seagrass matchup is what I'm looking forward to, especially after what Harden was able to do against Indiana in the second round of this past round of 32. So that's going to be great. Utah LSU, I like the idea of the Peely Reese matchup. I think guard play again is going to be very important. I need to see what Alexis Morris and Katari Poole is going to be able to do from a guard standpoint. I'm gonna go with Utah on this one. I'm gonna go with Utah on this one.
Ooh,
The reason why
spicy.
I'm going with Utah on this one is because I think that Utah, from a perimeter shooting standpoint, will outlast LSU's perimeter shooting. And I think that they can hold LSU to a lower shooting percentage on the perimeter. And if we cancel out Angel Reese and Peely, then there's really nothing for Angel Reese to that. There's nothing that Angel Reese could do to ultimately get her team into a position to win. Hey, I'm gonna take the oh my god pick, and I'm gonna go with Utah on this one.
Okay, Kata. You hear me with it. You hit me, you shocked me with that one right there. I was not expecting that from the God Kata. That's a good one right there. I was gonna say we would just preview the Elite Eight and stuff, but we won't. We'll just do that leading up to the Final Four and stuff, where we'll do our predictions and stuff like that. So we won't touch on that. But before we go, just want
Hold
to say
on, we
thank.
got one more.
Oh,
We got one more region. We got one more
oh
region.
snap! I'm tripping. We do got
Yeah,
one more region.
Seattle 3.
My bad. Yo, we got to do Seattle 3, y'all. My fault. My fault. Turnover. My bad. Seattle 3, we got Virginia Tech and Tennessee and Ohio State and UConn. Kata, I'll defer to you on this one. Let me just shake my head in disbelief while you talk.
No, no worries. That's why you have your point guard. I got you. I'm gonna set the alley up for you. I'm going Tennessee over Virginia Tech. I am definitely going Tennessee because they are playing at their highest peak, and they look good. They look really good. And as far as the UConn, Ohio State, I don't think Ohio State has the discipline to sustain a win over UConn. So I'm picking UConn with that one. Even though that's going to be a great game. It's going to be a great game, but it's just hit me from a discipline standpoint. Ohio State, they're in the words of our dear friend Dolores, they can be unserious. Sometimes they start off slow, right? Sometimes they hit you with a 20-point lead, but then allow you to come back. So you can't do that against UConn. And I don't think UConn is gonna play around with them. And then again, with the Tennessee Virginia Tech matchup, I really think that Tennessee is playing at their highest peak and they look really good. And they're coming in with so much confidence. I think they can pull off the win and knocking off that third number one seed.
Yeah, I agree with you with that too as well. We got Rakia Jackson, Jordan Horston, both playing at that level, being reminding me of Samika Randall and Tamika Catchings on the perimeter, just causing havoc and stuff. I don't think that Virginia Tech I don't think they have the bandwidth to contain that. I would be hard pressed for me to say Virginia Tech can win this one right here. I don't see it at all. Ohio State and UConn, this is going to be the game right here. This one's going to be tough. This one's going to be tough to pick. I really like Sheldon, son. I really do. I really think that she can get it. But you know what though? I just can't bet on Aaliyah Edwards too as well. I cannot bet on Lou Lopez Shinnet show, Nico Mule and everything like that. Listen, I'm rocking with UConn on that one. I don't need to go and give you a think piece on why. I just feel like there's going to be too much firepower on that right there. And UConn hungry. They want to get back to prominence. And I feel like UConn has been like the underdog and stuff because of their injuries and everything. And the fact that, oh, why am I on this blinking right now? Easy Fudd coming back, rounding back into form, looking like she's getting in better shape as far as like her conditioning. And that shooting is there. I know that I think she shot 9 for 22 her last game, 3 for 12 from three. But it was just that third quarter when she had 16 points. It was like, okay, now I see it. I see it. You definitely coming back in your bag and stuff and getting into the thing. And I think that when that Sweet 16, when that moment come, I think that AZ Fudd too as well is going to be locked in and focused and stuff. Now that she's healthy, we really get to see how she really is. And she's good, kdot. We've seen flashes and everything, but that third quarter that she put in a clinic with that in that third quarter, getting to the rim, from three, hitting the mid range and everything, just doing whatever it took for her to win, competing on defense. And I think that Gino's going to have his team ready to go, kdot.
Yeah, strongly agree.
Yeah.
Strongly agree. Can't say anything else.
Yeah, facts. All right, before we get out of here, though, shoot, kdot, we've reached the milestone 30,000 downloads, man, as a podcast. We way past 30,000 now, but we recently passed it. That's dope because last year, on the beginning of the 2022 WNBA season, on day one, we actually passed 10,000. So we actually doubled up so far going into our third season of podcasting and stuff. So I'm really happy about that. I know you happy about that, kdot. Like we really out here just grinding, putting out the content, doing the stuff on YouTube and stuff. Like our YouTube page is really picking up and everything. And yeah, just shout outs to y'all, to the supporters and everything. And yeah, what you got to say, kdot?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody you to support. We'll
Mhm.
continue to do everything that we can to put out consistent quality content for everyone. Again, the most unbiased show to cover hoops in the land, and we stand by that. We give everybody their flowers. We're not here to rain on anybody's parade. All we're here to do is talk genuine women's hoops with
Mhm.
everybody who enjoy women's hoops. And again, support by just liking, retweeting, subscribing. That gives us the opportunity to carry across all different other platforms. And hopefully, it gets us in a position to be more visible to everybody who enjoys women's basketball, who can't get the content that they're hoping to get. It's all up to you all, the listeners and the fans of our shows, to continue to help push us forward. And we're going to do everything in our power to continue to amplify the women's basketball. And we want them to get the optimal exposure and residuals that respectfully deserve.
Yeah.
We can't thank you guys enough for everything that you guys are doing so far, but we just ask for you to continue to support and continue to love keeping the 9450 code name be on the 9450 Basketball Network.
Exactly. But yeah, about that review too. Don't forget to review the podcast, especially if you're on Apple. The more reviews, that's what's going to give us more visual when we get the reviews and stuff. So I get it. We get a lot of DMs. We get a lot of great compliments like kdot Daniel, great show and everything like that. But honestly, like we need y'all to keep that same energy. Go to the Apple review and leave a review. If you can even copy and paste that message that you left and throw it on a review and give us a 5-star rating because it really helps us to get more visible. We definitely have, and I'm not even what the kids say, kdot capping or whatever. When I say that we have one of the best women's basketball podcasts in the world, like we have the ratings and stuff, we're in the top 10,000. We're actually, if technically we're in the top 7,000 of all podcasts worldwide. And as a basketball podcast, we're like in the top like 250 worldwide, not in the United States, worldwide. It really helps us when y'all do those reviews and things like that. Normally, we don't really do the call to actions and stuff, but we're going to start doing the call to actions because it'll actually help us. And we realize like the impact that we're having in this community and stuff by all the adulation y'all give us and everything like that. We just want y'all to just also put that on the Apple review. That'll definitely help us. And also YouTube as well. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. I think we have 95 subscribers. We're trying to get to 500. We really want to grow that YouTube channel and stuff. And we almost at 10,000 views on YouTube, kdot, as well. The shorts be the ones that be carrying everything. So I think that I'm going to do YouTube a little bit different and just probably put a little bit of 5-minute clips on everything instead of just putting whole shows out. because I'm starting to see like the shorts, all the short-term stuff, you know what I'm saying, gets a lot more views than the long-term stuff. And also getting us to 30,000. I want to give a shout out to Lo, who was on our show and gave us a
Right.
big, super big boost. And it's crazy, what Lo did, and sharing and supporting our show too as well. Then shout outs to every guest that came on the show as well.
Fact.
Now I know that we got another guest coming on too. We were supposed to have a guest today, but unfortunately she couldn't make it on to the show because she got our message late. She was already asleep. So I think that she's going to come on and preview the Final Four with us. So that's going to be
Dope.
cool and everything. But yeah, like I said, just keep rocking with us. We're going to rock with y'all. And with that being said, thank you for listening to Keeping It 9450, codename WBB. You can follow us at the 9450 on Twitter. You can follow kdot at kdot.lou3h on Twitter. Myself at D_Artest on Twitter as well. kdot, I think it might be time for us to make the 9450.com website and start really doing it up and doing some articles and everything like that. Because I think that people want to see more. So we're going to give them more. And I think that we're going to do that website. So stay tuned. And with that being said, love is love.